Okay, in today's video, we're going to be covering should you live in the suburbs or in urban areas. We're going to cover the pros and the cons of both, so we're getting after it right now.
All right, if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in the greater Portland metro area, make sure you click that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, do a little dance so that you can be the first to know about everything happening in the greater Portland metro area.
I'm Ann Stewart. This is Erica Hagfors. We are your go-to gals if you're making the move to Portland, and all of our contact information is below. So don't be shy. Text us, call us, email us. Hit us up, we'll get on a call with you or a Zoom, and we can tell you all about how to make that smooth transition to the Portland metro area and beyond. All right, so we're just wrapping up drinking our coffee for the morning, and we thought we would cover a video that we oftentimes kind of cover with you when you call us, which is, should you live in the burbs or should you live in a suburban area? Now, sometimes you know where you want to live. You know, it's very clear for some people because they want a distinct lifestyle, but we thought we'd kind of cover like pros and cons and kind of give you an insight into things you should consider if you're going to be living in the suburbs or
an urban setting.
Okay, so the first thing we want to talk to you about, if this matters to you, and it may not, and you can just fast forward to the next one, which is schools. So Erica, why don't you talk about that?
So oftentimes schools is a major consideration for our buyers when they're coming up into this new area for themselves. And I would say that generally our schools are better in the suburban setting. So you're gonna find higher rated, schools, places like Bethany and the West Hills, Lake Oswego, areas outside of the urban setting of Portland are generally going to have higher rated schools. And, so that becomes a consideration of where you're going to be and, what comes along with that. But I would definitely say that that's going to be a little bit better for you in these suburban settings versus the urban settings. Would you agree, Ann?
I would agree with that. And I'd also add on that while you choose, let's say you're just a urban type family and you do want to focus on schools, we do have some excellent private schools. And in some cases, the urban areas are closer to those excellent private schools. So it's not to say that you can't find really good schools in and around the urban areas, but you might have to be a little bit more strategic. And it's not to say that all urban areas have bad schools either. We want to clarify that because we're being very general in how we're talking right now about schools. But if schools are really, really important to you, then likely you're going to find more options in the suburbs.
And to add on to that, I generally find that you have a lot of the tutoring options out in the suburbs. We have a lot of businesses per se that cater to that for these, the schools out in the suburbs.
A big pro of living in the suburb, or not suburbs, but urban, is public transportation, walkability, or the ability to use your bike. So a lot of people who move to the urban areas want to be close to stuff. They may want to ride their bikes to work.
They may not have cars.
They may not even have cars, or they are close enough to work that they want the option to be able to walk or get on their bike or just hop on public transportation and get there that way. There's maybe more sidewalk availability, more straight linear areas for you to ride your bike, walk versus being in the suburbs. So we usually say if you're really wanting to utilize public transportation or be on your own with it without having to worry about a car, then usually the urban areas are going to fit you a little better depending on where you work or have to travel to in general.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that that's going to be a disadvantage if you're living in a suburban setting. Generally, you're going to be a lot more spread out. You've got a lot more neighborhood per se that you're going to be dealing with. Not that those neighborhoods aren't going to be walkable and rideable, but you're going to be so much further away from your work or amenities that you're not going to be wanting to necessarily ride your bike or take public transportation. It's going to be counterproductive, more so in a setting that's suburban.
Yeah, you're definitely going to need your car in the suburbs to get to all kinds of places.
Yeah, so. I mean, you think about like in the urban settings, you can a lot of times get to, your healthcare provider or your grocery store, and those generally are going to be further away when you're out in the suburbs. You're just going to be car dependent. And that's something that you tend to expect when you're living in a more suburban setting is that everything's just a little bit further away.
So going back to being close to things, when you're in the urban setting, one of the big advantages is typically you're really close to like mom and pop restaurants, coffee shops, window shopping, or areas that you can get to on foot or bike.
Yep.
And that's one of the great things about Portland is we have a lot of great food carts and restaurants and things.
So many great food
And the
spots.
closer in you are, the closer you are to those things versus being in the suburbs where...
Yeah, again, walking to all those things. And a lot of times you're going to find more chain restaurants, your fast food restaurants. So you just don't quite get that variety of individual mom and pop type shops or restaurants. You're just getting, it's a little bit more of a chain. And that's because people kind of want an expected experience when they're out in the suburbs versus, downtown and urban settings are a little bit more of that like one-off, unique experience type.
And that's what Portland's known for.
It really is.
Our restaurant scene that is usually in the urban areas. It's not typically in the deep suburbs because that's where, people want to be closer into the city. And so the closer in you are, you have a lot more of those options at your fingertips.
And that's, like Ann said, we are known for our food.
Yeah.
I feel like food carts started here. Like that's where they became so big. And now we have so many pods of them. And we, the breakfast scene, I remember we've got a ton of great breakfast restaurants and dinner restaurants. And if you think about it, the action is in the urban setting.
Yeah.
So that's where people go to start their restaurants.
More people.
Not to say that you don't have occasional further out, but when people are thinking of
you're eating at home probably more in the suburbs.
Exactly.
Is my guess.
Again, not to generalize too much, but generally we tend to find that a lot more of the suburban setting folks are going to be more family oriented or, they've got kids or they want a little bit more of a home structure. Whereas when you're living downtown, you are a little bit more of you want to experience the city.
Yeah. All right. Now, a negative of being in the urban areas is it's more expensive.
Yep.
So the rule of thumb is the closer you are to downtown, the more expensive it tends to be. So you may get a smaller property or fewer bedrooms in these really hot little neighborhoods where you can walk to places and get to food carts and all the fun stuff we've been talking about. But you're typically going to pay a lot more for that. So
you got to pay to play, man.
Got to pay to play.
And you're getting. The other thing, though, I will say is that you're getting a little bit of more uniqueness and variety. However, you definitely, are going to pay to play to be closer to the city. Whereas when you go out to the suburbs, you're going to get a little bit more cookie cutter. However, it's going to be a little bit more tame when it comes to price. You're going to get a lot more home, square footage wise, bedrooms wise, bathroom wise, if you're a little bit further out.
Now, one little caveat to that is if you buy in the suburbs or what we consider the suburbs, but you're in a walkable area, because we have a great video that we've done about walkable neighborhoods on the west side, it's possible that you could be paying a lot higher prices. In fact, you will. Yeah. Because anywhere in Portland, no matter if it's near the burbs or not, anything that's walkable is considered urban, which is considered you can get to all the fun places really easily. So that's the caveat, is those places can be very expensive in the suburbs because they're closer out, but they feel like you can walk around and do what you can in the downtown or closer in areas. Okay, the next one we have to talk about, which is safety. Yeah. So when you're in an urban setting, you're obviously around a lot more foot traffic. You're near typically public transportation. You're more in the denser parts of the inner parts of the Portland metro area. And therefore, there is a tendency to have more crime in those areas, especially if you don't have a garage, which a lot of places don't have a garage, or they have a small one-car garage that doesn't fit a modern garage. Maybe you're leaving your bikes out on the front porch, or your cars are parked further away from your house or whatnot. So we tend to see that in a lot of those urban dense areas, there's just naturally a lot more crime going on.
A lot more crime. It's easy access, easy in, easy out, which is what, thieves generally like to see. And because you have more foot traffic in a denser situation or setting, you also tend to have a lot more resources for, say, the homeless or, people on hard times. And that's fun. That's great. However, it does tend to lead to, like Ann said, increased crime, increased traffic that maybe you don't want around, other things that you maybe don't want to find out on your property. And so just something to think about is, a lot of times we have people asking us about, where they can be to feel a little bit safer. And we generally find the suburban settings, because you have neighborhoods, you might have a cul-de-sac. If a thief's coming into a cul-de-sac, they got to go out the same way they came in. And so it's a little bit harder, a little bit more daunting. And so,
And there are websites you can check crime rates. We're not allowed to tell you about crime rates. We have to be careful on how we discuss this topic. But anybody has access to it. And there's crime everywhere, just for the record. I mean, even in the suburbs, but you just have to decide what your maybe
comfort
level is with that. And there are resources you can go to discover in different areas, because certainly there are some suburbs that are maybe just as, crime ridden as in the urban areas. But in general, when you're closer into areas that people can get to fast or easily, you'll see it, as well as homeless. I mean, it's just the nature of, the homeless population is closer into downtown, but we are starting to see that it's kind of, it's always been everywhere, but it's just more dense, usually the closer in you get, which usually tends to be more urban areas. So we've kind of told you about pros and cons of both urban and suburban living, and there's no right or wrong.
Nope.
We get people that their lifestyle is their lifestyle. They want to be in certain types of areas. This might help you break down in your mind what to sort of expect or prioritize based on your needs.
Or things to think about, because it really, like Ann said, it's going to come down to what your needs are. Do you need a more quiet lifestyle at home, or do you want to be close to the action?
Yeah.
And if you want to be close to the action, then great. We look for things as much as we possibly can to find the other things that are going to suit your life.
And it could be commute. It could be, and maybe you're in a season in life. We always tell people this. Maybe you're in your 2 to 5 year house program where it's like, you'll probably get to the suburbs, but you really want to experience the urban life. Or maybe you're downsizing and you're like, hey, we've always wanted to live in a condo and have restaurants down below, that we can walk to, whatever it is. But these are just some things we wanted to point out that people, tend to talk about or think about or need to think about as they're considering both options. All right, thanks for joining us on today's video about urban or suburban. And if you have questions about anything we talked about today, or if you want to drop a comment below, did we miss something? Is there something you thought, girls, you missed the mark, we didn't even cover this topic? We want to hear from you. So put your comments below. And again, if you are thinking about making a move, you know how to reach us. All of our contact information is in the description below. See you on the next video.